So, today we're getting started in chapter 1 of this magnificent little book called Know Why You Believe by Paul Little. Now, I want to remind you for this video series that I'm putting together now that will go by chapter by chapter in that book. It's not really necessary that you have the book. If you do, I think it'll be helpful for you. It's helpful for small groups. I'm teaching this to a small group now, and I think the video series goes along well with the text. Know Why You Believe by Paul Little. Please know, I don't receive any kind of financial compensation for this. I don't get any money from YouTube. I don't get any money from the publishers of the book or anything like that. I'm just doing this because I believe that the very biggest question facing the generation that's coming up is the question, why do we believe? Today we're going to get about halfway through the first chapter in this book, and primarily what we're going to be talking about is the fact that it is okay to use your brain in Christianity. It's not just a matter of the heart. That's equally important, but it's both the emotion and the intellect. This could well be an improper value judgment on my part, but it seems like today some of our church services have become more like entertainment, like concerts, etc. I've noticed it seems like a lot of people kind of leave their brain in the car out on the parking lot and feel like that's okay. It's not okay. Remember what Jesus said in Luke chapter 10, the greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. And here it is, with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. God created our brains and he created our emotions. I understand those are not two totally separate features of what makes a human being, but for the sake of this video series, we're going to be looking at it in terms of the brain and the heart, or the intellect and the emotions. First thing we're going to do is define terms. I love this painting here. It's The Death of Socrates by Jacques-Louis David, painted just before the French Revolution. And what you're seeing here is Socrates. It's a supposed picture. Jacques-Louis David painted this over 1,000 years, nearly 2,000 years after Socrates actually died. And so nobody really knows that if you see the extended picture, you know that there are 13 people in this, and it's kind of representative of Socrates being a Christ figure with his 12 disciples. Well, just don't worry about all of that. The purpose that David painted this was to say to the French people, there are ideals worth dying for. And this painting is a painting of Socrates getting ready to drink the poison as part of his execution and taking a stand for the ideals he believed in. But for our purposes here, Socrates said the first thing you've got to do in any argument is define terms. So here are the terms we're going to be looking at. Today we're going to be talking about apologetics, faith, and reason. So let's look more carefully at the definitions of each one of these three words. What is apologetics? I've taught this in college for a lot of years. It's always a section of my philosophy classes, and I've often had students come up and say, why do we need to learn how to apologize? Well, that really doesn't have anything to do with this word, apologetics. Apologetics is a branch of theology. Notice that word theology, the study of God. It's a branch of theology that is devoted to the defense. That's an important word here, defending the faith. There's so many opponents to Christianity out there. And in the Western world, the number of those opponents seem to escalate every day. And if there ever was a time that Christians need to be able to have a defense for their faith, it's these days. Well, what are we defending? We're defending the origin and authority of Christianity. That means looking at questions especially like, does God exist? So that's the definition of apologetics. It's a fancy word, but it's an important word for us in this class. Second definition that I want to give to you is the definition of the word faith. Seems like we all ought to know what faith is, but that's not necessarily the case. Faith is composed of three essential components. First of all, the mind. And that is belief. Now, faith is much more than belief. Sometimes the two terms are used interchangeably and sometimes appropriately so, sometimes not appropriately so. But to have faith, you have to have belief. But belief alone is not sufficient. I may be looking at a rope to climb. Now, at my age, I don't do any of that, but let's say the rope looks a little tattered, but I believe that it can hold me, and so I start climbing it. That's belief. That's not necessarily faith. It's belief. I believe that there's a president in Washington, D.C. I believe that there is a prime minister in Israel. I believe that there is a prime minister in India. It doesn't mean I have trust in any of those. But I do believe they exist. And the Bible says that even the devils believe in God. Faith also incorporates the word trust. Trust. So there's that rope I'm looking at, getting ready to climb it, and it looks a little tattered. I may believe that that rope can sustain my weight, but I'll only climb it if I trust that it can sustain my weight. And the third component here is commitment. So faith is belief, trust, and commitment. Faith in God is you believe God exists, but it's more than that. It's also trust that He's going to provide and take care of you. But it's also a commitment that you make to Him, that I commit to you, God, that I will do my best to be your servant. So the last word here is the word reason. It is perhaps the most difficult word to define because we use this word in a lot of different ways. But in this video, in this class, we're using reason as kind of a synonym for second order thinking. What is second order thinking? It means thinking about thinking. Only humans can do that. We can think about our thinking and try to figure out whether it's healthy thinking or not healthy thinking. And if it's not healthy, we can think about what's a better choice to change it to. Only humans can do that. Reason is critical thinking. And by that, we process ideals or ideas or information, and we analyze that information and evaluate that information. So when it comes to apologetics, we start looking at the evidences for whether or not God really exists. And we're not just going to take mommy and daddy's word for it, or some friend down the street, no matter how much we love that friend or love mom and dad. What we're doing is we're applying this to our own selves, and we're processing these thoughts, we're analyzing these thoughts, and we're evaluating these thoughts.